Welcome. So we'll be discussing the Down to Earth edition for August 1st to 15. Now here some of the important topics that were discussed pertain to rainfall, climate change and related topics. So the first one is Varun Mitra. Now Varun Mitra is a local citizen initiative at Pune, and this actually brings in the local rainfall data and ensures that raindrop data which has been collected from different 52 locations through the various volunteers is actually being reported, recorded, analyzed, and the insights are being shared with IMD. So, what are some of the discrepancies that have been found in the weather patterns in Pune compared to Western Pune and Eastern Pune? We can see western side of the Pune receives very heavy rainfall as compared to the eastern side. Similarly, the extreme weather events are clearly observed and they are very high in the months of May, usually 8 to 10 times higher than the other months, and this is what has been observed. Now who have been the major figures behind this initiative of Varun Mitra? So it is Abhijit Gandhi who started this project, and then there are various volunteers, and finally the data is being provided to IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, for localized data generation. And if this model turns out to be successful, this could be integrated with other cities as well as part of the education by installing rain gauge and the installations at the village and the local levels. The next is the climate change. Now, International Court of Justice has talked about a decision where we are trying to reshape the legal landscape for climate responsibility and accountability. So what has been the worst things that we have seen so far are the small developed island nations, and these are the SDICs, which are actually focusing on the impact that has been seen on these local areas. Now there have been various students of law from Vanuatu. Now Vanuatu is one of the very important case studies which we have already covered in a separate lecture, highly important for geography optional students and for climate change, so don't miss that. Now the next is there are various countries which have been co-sponsoring it and focusing on what could be the alternative solutions and how you could bring it around. So as per the International Court of Justice, there has been a clear verdict talking about the climate commitments from the political things that have been taken into account to enforceable duties. So the actions that are contributing to climate change are considered as illegal now. There is legal responsibility which the countries must abide to, and then climate treaties are now binding. They were at some point of time they were considered as non-binding, but now they would be considered as binding, and a state must adopt the measures to mitigate emission and adopt climate change. So climate change treaties, human law and various environmental pacts together make sure that any violation of these international laws would be entailed with state responsibility, and any wrongful action, non-repetitive action or reparations would be taken into consideration very seriously, right? So there are various climate diplomacies which have been seen under COP30. Many of them relate to the previous ones relate to geopolitical conflicts, and they were highly ambiguous and focused on the climate denialism. However, the newer ones mainly focus on mitigation and legal responsibilities that states must take. So focusing more on climate policies, its enforcement and the litigations that are important has been the real change. The next is, as we have focused on litigation, we are also trying to understand that the world is turning towards a global tipping point, and this is where a break point would be seen, where once the climate activities start to induce, they would they would continue that on a self-sufficing mode. So these would be further detrimental for human civilizations. So there have been higher number of lawsuits that have been filed in the last 10 years, and this has grown by nearly 3.2 times. There are nearly more than 2000 cases filed, and only in 2025 we have seen 100 new cases which actually focus on higher legal action. Now if we talk about the lawsuits, there has been a threefold increase, as we already said. The activism has gone very higher in the regions of Africa, where we have seen some of the deadliest period of weather related disasters, which has affected nearly 220 million population in the region. Now what has been driving this whole change of legal litigations that are going through are, firstly, citizens from all age brackets are coming together. Government bodies and public bodies are being held accountable for the same. NGOs and non-profit organizations are working tremendously. There have been significant number of environmental violations, and the climate policies have not been able to make the things as they should be. So in India itself, there have been three important cases. One was Virendra Gaur versus state of Haryana, and here Supreme Court said that it is the right to clean environment as part of the fundamental right under Article 21. Then we have MK Rajneet Singh versus Union of India, and this was to balance the climate obligations with the protection of endangered species, mainly the great Indian bustard in the regions of Bharatpur. The next is Supreme Court judgment that was again under the Ranjit Singh case, focusing mainly on reducing the emissions and protecting the species. So there are three major approaches that India has followed. One is the precautionary principle, that is preventing before it happens. The next is polluter pay principle, where the polluter actually pays the burden or the cost. And then is the intergenerational equity, which is safeguarding the things for the future generations to come. Also, there has been a huge backlog of the environmental disputes. There has been a difficulty in identifying who is the real culprit behind it, and often courts actually do not approach the case through the vision of the climate issue. So again, it hits the ultimate climate aspects, right? The next is Himalayas, which are now turning into mountains of misery. We have seen higher number of cloudbursts than usual this year, and this year we have seen specifically devastating weather conditions in the regions of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Now if we focus on the disaster related casualties, we had seen 2021 was on its peak, but the figures started to decline later. But again 2025 the figures are yet surging, and Uttarakhand has seen nearly 30% increase in disaster resulted casualties. Also, we are seeing that every 1 and 2 day in Himachal Pradesh and every 1 and 3 day in Uttarakhand, the region comes into high alert area. That is, the frequency of extreme weather events are very high in those areas, which indicate either flash floods, cloudburst or landslides. Now, what has been the major cause? The cause is not just climate change, but it is also the anthropogenic changes, which is the unplanned development leading to the ecological consequences of landslide, flash floods, loss of biodiversity and destabilization of the mountain slopes. Now this has created a domino effect, which has led to widening of the roads, slope cutting, glacier retreat and devastation of the flora and fauna of the region. So there is an urgent need for sustainable solution. EIAs had not been followed under right jurisdiction. Dams had been built even where the clearance were not given. So all these have been affecting the ecosystem badly. The next is the plastics. Now plastics are called as the hidden health crisis for most of the world, and it is believed that nearly 1.5 trillion estimated annual health cost would come just from 3 common plastics that are used, and this would be the burden that society would has to bear. Now US fossil subsidies for plastic have increased in the recent time. Now this has again created a huge fury among the climate activists. Also there has been unrestricted use of plastics, and there has been a huge amount of plastic which has not been even tested for its toxicity. Now how it works is, there is a production unit where the plastic actually goes into the respiratory, neurological and developmental systems, specifically for the neonatal. Then the clear use, which is mainly in the form of phthalates and bisphenols, which leach into the food through the food packings or the clothings, and they have been found in the newborns, causing cellular damage. Also, there has been huge disposal issues. Nearly 8 billion tons of plastic pollution has been witnessed, and there has been unsafe waste management. Now, what is a healthier future? We are seeing a One Health approach. We are banning, trying to phase out, create harmonized standards for consumption of plastics, aligning the flow of the finances, and finally ensuring that climate is not affected by plastic. So recycled plastics and putting the limit to single-use plastics have been important, not only just in India but globally. The next is India is trying to give a big push to renewable energy. Now under this, there has been a huge collision between the traditional people and the industries or the establishments that are trying to come, and this has been witnessed in the regions of Ladakh. Now Ladakh is known for its ancient tradition and livelihoods of the nomadic herders. We have seen that there has been a target of nearly 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, and this has put nearly 7,000 Pashmina dependent families on a thread. Now the project has actually been seen in the regions of Changtham, and it has been covering nearly 37,000 football fields with an estimated cost of nearly 60,000 crores, 20,000 hectares of land and 13 gigawatts of capability. This would be mainly focusing on solar with 9 gigawatts and wind for 4 gigawatts. Now this land has been acquired through the local people. There has been no legal land titles which have been given. The land has been allotted to the project. It has been assumed that it was not habited and it does not belong to anyone, and there has been no consent, no compensation which has been given to the nomadic herders. Now also we have seen that this project itself would require a massive influx of the migrant population, which would disturb the ecosystem in the regions of Ladakh. So again, from the climate activist view, this has been a very important thing that has to be taken into consideration. Also, the nomadic herders who are moving here are known for their Pashmina wool. Pashmina wool has been given the GI tag, and the goats that would be grazing on this area of 20,000 hectares of land are being affected in the name of environmental progress, right? The next is India is talking about the scheme for offering financial rewards for local elections, and the impact has been seen at the grassroots levels. There is one of the scheme which is Samras Gram Yojana, which has been seen in Gujarat. Now this provides financial grants to the village panchayat to elect their representative by consensus. This would avoid any kind of formal voting system. So community leaders negotiate on a single candidate. The candidate files the nomination which is unopposed. There is no voting, no campaign, and finally the panchayat receives the grant, and this goes on. So this has been seen unopposed in nearly 10,000 panchayat elections in compared to 240,000 where it has been contested. Similarly, the incentives under the Samras grant has been given as a portion of annual budget by nearly 15%, and the states which have been competing with cash are mainly Punjab, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh. Now there have been arguments in favor as well as against the same. So who are in favor say that this would reduce the community disputes, help in better developmental projects and avoid the cost of elections. Those who are against it say that it is a way to marginalize the minorities, women, SC/ST workers, and create a hold of the dominant community in the village or the panchayat, and this would lead to further higher corruptions in the region. The next is in the region of Jharia. We have seen there has been a huge devastation, and that is affecting the nearly 37 million tons of coal which has been affected by fire in the last 100 years, and this is nearly accounting to 220 billion tons of coal which is now unminable. Now the cost is a constant danger. The ground can collapse without warning. There can be falling boulders that could be seen. Smoke and toxic fumes are seen, and there is a fear which is leaving people reluctant from relocating. So the official report versus the local reports show a huge difference in the affected sites. In reality, there are nearly 70 codes per area and square kilometers which are being affected. However, in the official report, it's just 27. Also, there has been a shortfall of the housing planning. The isolations and lack of amenities have been seen, and this have been worstly affecting the region. The next is the Jim Corbett area. Now, Jim Corbett is known for its tiger, and it's one of the very famous tiger reserves. However, we have seen that there have been rising man-human conflict in the man-animal conflict in the recent times, and there are 12 man-eater tigers which have been identified in the region. However, 1500 lives have been saved in the last 31 years of service. This is one of the first national parks which have been established in India. Now, between 1907 to 1937, this was called as a man-eating tiger center, where people were terrorized in the regions of Garhwal and Kumaon, and there was no tracking. However, over the time, there has been a transformation. The hunters are now eliminated. There have been authors and naturalists and conservatives who are focusing on the development in the region. So if we talk about the timeline, there has been origin from Irish descent in the regions of Jim Corbett. Now, he killed the first leopard at the age of 10 and showed the skills. Then there were 12 man-eating tigers who were hunted, and various lives were saved across the period of 20 years from 1907 to 1938. Then there was the publication of Man-Eaters of Kumaon, and this was one of the interesting books that was released. And finally, there was a period where there was a first national park which has been established. However, of recent, we are again seeing there is higher number of animal human conflict which has been seen in the regions close to tiger reserves. The next is the impact of Samvedna mental health initiative which has been started in the region of Chhattisgarh. Now, this is to specifically address the people who are facing mental health challenges and ensure that they are marked by high prevalence, and there is a gap between those who are actually needing it and those who are receiving the care. So 14% of the lifetime prevalence of mental disorders has been found in the state. Nearly 11 to 26% of the residents are being affected by mental health issues. There has been only a few percent, which is around 11%, which are being given a proper health care. However, the others are not receiving the treatment. So what has been done under the Samvedna program is door-to-door survey, identifying the individuals who are facing mental health issues, providing care through the PHCs and the CHCs, creating community awareness and training the healthcare workers. Now, this could create a measurable impact and progress we could see. The chart here focuses on the initial pilot projects in the regions of Kondegaon, and this has been established in the regions of expanded in the regions of Durg later on. So more than 1 million people have been screened for mental health diseases across Chhattisgarh, and we have seen the 90% of those who were screened and received the health care were better off than others. Now the next is Mitti Ek Nayi Pehchan. Now this is a 8-episode serial which has been very popular, identifying the rural life and placing the complex challenges of modern Indian farming systems. So this has become one of the very famous road shows or narratives depicting the life of the farmers in present day world. So there has been a series which you could say which has been inspiring from city to soil, and this series talks about Raghav, who is a advertising professional. He returns to his village and undergoes a transformation. Now he tries to connect and reconnect the leadership activities, and there has been a fusion of old and new, focusing on modern technology, polyhouses, drones, and the traditional knowledge which has been seen, but it also focuses into interconnectedness of the corruption, the inadequate incomes, and the farmer debt and suicide cases. The next is Ash God, which is also called as the bottle god. Now this is one of the very famous the vegetables through which you have the petha from Agra, which has been created. Now this Ash God is actually known for its unique flavor. Also there is a large portion which is discarded, and a lot of that is being used for the production in Agra. Nearly 750 tons is produced on a daily basis. Now this ash god is actually known by various names in various parts of India. It is a popular dish in South India with coconut curry milk and sambar. In West it is again considered with a sweet dish. In East and in North India with vadis it is being consumed. Now some of the major properties include anti-cancer property as a treatment for Alzheimer's, as a treatment for managing diabetes, and curing the inflammatory bowel syndrome. The best thing about it is it has a very long shelf life. It is easy to transport and easy to cultivate. It is known for its good content on vitamin C, detoxing activities, high proportion of vitamin A, and improving the gut health. The next is we are seeing that the world is losing farms and farmers at a very quick pace, and there has been a generational gap that has been seen. So on an average there is 55 years, which is the average age of the farmers, and nearly 2000 farmers lost per day. And this figure in India itself is very high. So if we go on to the number of farms, they have been declining significantly from 600 millions to nearly 300 million. It's just a figure which has been projected in the next few decades, and there is a significant transition in the workforce moving from agriculture, and global employment is nearly coming to half. So the people are now having smaller lands with lesser production, and there is a projected growth in the average farm size which is considered. So even if we are talking about the average farm size worldwide, they are ought to double. The smallest farms are being now the source of global food production, and also we are seeing nearly 600 million farms being feeding nearly 8 billion people, and in India it has nearly 272 million farms which are feeding more than 10 billion people. So one of the very important thing is again, as we have seen in China, a transition towards what is called a new concept in agriculture, and possibly the ideas of factory farming. The next is Ganga's summer secret. Now here we are focusing on groundwater being one of the very important lifelines of the people in the Indo-Gangetic plain. There has been an increase in nearly 120% in the volume as it leaves the region of Himalaya. The aquifers are now getting very stable due to higher rainfall, and there has been a huge restoration for the tributaries. The groundwaters have been recharged at a very high level. The next is the global energy demand. Now, the projected trends we could see are seeing that the growth for the electricity has been increasing. However, in India, we have seen there has been a higher share of renewable source of energy, increasing from 15 to 20%, and the coal share getting less than 33% for the first time in the century. Now, this is one of the very major updates on global electricity demand. And finally, we are talking about the National Agricultural Policy, which is one of the major policies to boost climate resilience, productivity, lower the cost of production, and ensure fair prices. Also focus on the post-harvest management of the crops. Now, there are various remedial rules which have been released in 2025, and for the first time India has created a legal framework to manage chemically contaminated sites. So identifying, evaluating, and remediation of these sites has become very important. Also, there is another rule which has been brought into focus, and that is the Offshore Atomic Mineral Rule 2025, where Ministry of Mines has introduced strict rules for exploring and extraction of strategic atomic mineral. However, private partners are being provided leeway. There has been specific geographical areas, specifically offshore areas, and focusing on radioactive minerals and rare earth minerals are two of the important areas of development. So those are some of the important things that we have considered here for Down to Earth this time. Thanks for joining in. Of course, we'll be covering further interesting topics in Down to Earth in the upcoming sessions, so don't miss those. Stay tuned. And for your mains, of course, answer writings we have covered comprehensively, so just watch that series. Thanks for joining.